All right, we are here at Vegas Summer League. I'm Tom Haberstroh, and I'm joined by Amin Elhassan, my basketball Illuminati 5-star general over here. As part of the Le Batard Network, we are here at Thomas and Mack in Vegas, and we're joined right now by Griff, the executive VP of the New Orleans Pelicans. Longtime NBA guy. Welcome to the show.
Lifer. They call them lifers.
I don't know. That's kind of an
I'm not sure I feel good about long time. Although I do want to make sure before we go any further, you basically said Illuminati when you talked.
Yes.
About
Yes.
Was that intentional?
Yes. That's
okay.
that's the name of the followers, the loyal followers.
He's an Illuminati general. Army general.
5 stars.
Yeah,
that
5 star.
Spectacular.
He's got stripes, Griff.
That's spectacular.
I know you know the stripes that he has.
Well, I know more about that than people should know.
Why did you hire Amin?
He was the only one that. He's the only one that showed up. No, that's a loaded question. We'll get there later.
Well, like you're coming off one of the more momentous moments of your tenure with the New Orleans Pelicans, signing Zion Williamson to a 5-year max, and I know that everyone wants to talk about that. But before we get there was another acquisition you made. Was C.J. McCollum last year, and a noted wine connoisseur. And I know you and your wife, Meredith, are big wine connoisseurs.
She certainly is, yes.
And foodies. And I'm just wondering, did she argue for that trade just so that they could talk wine together? Nothing to do with basketball.
I can tell you it wasn't received poorly as a concept. However, one of the problems in that situation was Josh Hart, who is also a big wine guy and foodie, was part of the trade. And we were very close to Josh and really remain close to Josh in the sense that we love him and we love Shannon. So she was not happy to see Shannon leave. Josh, she could take her leave, but Shannon leaving was a big deal. So for the family, it's always about who's coming in from that perspective.
I feel like Josh is too young to be a wine connoisseur, right? Like, don't you have to have kind of...
He's still in his Franzia phase, I feel like.
Yeah, sadly, he is not. He is full-blown all about it. He is really connected to the folks at Wine Access, and he is not on CJ's level of understanding, but he's on CJ's level of enjoyment. Let's put it that way.
Is there like a secret layer of like a wine cellar in Vegas that only you know about, or people in the NBA? There's only like a secret society?
I'm not at a level that would know anything about that because it's such a big deal now in the NBA,
right?
In particular with players. Kevin Love is one of the members of the Wine Illuminati, if there was such a thing.
Yes.
In the NBA.
Wine Illuminati coming soon.
There's a group of players that have an understanding and access to things that I can only dream of. So I'm not part of that group.
Outside of the players, it's Pop, right? Pop is the godfather.
Pop was the godfather for sure.
Wine
Absolutely.
NBA.
Absolutely.
But like players, it's Kevin Love, it's Channing Frye,
LeBron,
CJ,
Dwayne Wade.
Yeah, Dwayne, that's right. He's got his own.
Carmelo is really into it. I know. Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
man, Amari bathes in wine. Remember that? That was a time. Wasn't that a time? Fill up a bathtub with some wine, soak in it. Why not?
That's such like a flex. Is when you can just buy enough wine to just bathe in it.
What kind of wine do you think he was using?
Well, if it was box wine, it's not that big a deal, right? So.
But isn't that for the healing purposes? Doesn't it have to be good wine?
No, not really. The medicinal properties of the antioxidants are there, even if it's bad wine, as long as they came from grapes. Now, some bad wine may not originate from grapes. I can't speak to that.
So, Griff, you started in 1993 in the NBA, and I think it was a PR intern for the Phoenix Suns. Were you working a summer league at any point in the early 90s? And
Sure.
Can you describe the scene of the early 90s summer league scene in the NBA?
So we did 2 summer leagues, as I recall, my first year. We did the Long Beach Summer League, which was in the Pyramid in Long Beach. And we did the Utah Summer League, which at that time was played in a high school gym that had no air conditioning.
Nice.
And there were some days there that were sweltering in that gym. But it's just come so far. When Warren started Vegas, Mike D'Antoni was one of our assistant coaches.
Warren LeGarry, you're talking about.
Yeah, Warren LeGarry, sort of the godfather of the Vegas Summer League. Mike D'Antoni was still an assistant coach with us at the time when this started. And we had several Warren clients on staff. And so we were one of the first teams in because I think we had 6 Warren LeGarry clients on staff. And so it was just something that we were in on the ground floor of and was here to watch Nate Robinson get his jersey retired.
Oh, what a time. Man.
Yeah, I'm a lifer, as you said, so I've seen it all.
when you've been to as many summer leagues as you've been, there are certain moments that stand out. Nate Robinson getting his jersey retired at the Cox Pavilion wall. Yeah. Jeremy Lin and John Wall going head-to-head. Anthony Morrow scoring 47 points. Do you have a specific summer league memory that you're like, man, that one stands out?
I mean, last year when we were undefeated and Najee Marshall took the opportunity to declare us champions when we didn't actually win a, quote, championship, that stood out for me just because of the level of competitiveness that Najee brought to the equation. You know, I don't really have moments for me in Summer League that, like, stand out more than any other from Vegas. I do have from my very first Summer League, Go-Go Greg Grant scored 53 points in a game for the Phoenix Suns in the Summer League.
Who could forget?
And I say that to remind everyone, there's a lot of things that happen in Summer League that don't pertain to the varsity. So it's important not to get too high or too low off of what you see here, because I don't think very many people know Go-Go Greg Grant like we do. So
wait, the earthquake happened here, didn't it?
It did.
And you were, that was a big night, because wasn't it?
Yeah, that was big. That was, I was a meme that night. Yeah, I was scared to death. So what had happened the night of the earthquake was the night before, during our player meeting, an earthquake had hit in the hotel. We were staying at the Aria at the time.
That wasn't.
And the light fixtures started swinging, and light bulbs were falling on the ground.
No.
So I was terrified. We all were. So we literally ran out of the conference room we were in because the roof was falling down on us. So when I was down here on the court at Thomas and Mack, and it started to sway again, I was like, what's going to fall? What's going to fall?
Oh, man.
And so I became a meme, but really, I literally had just had the experience the day before where the lights fell out of the room.
I don't remember the first earthquake. The one I remember was the one here. And my memory, I was on the riser because we were doing the jump. And if you want to, like, have fun during an earthquake, be on a rickety structure. That's very just because it's shaking. And I don't think people noticed at first. We felt it first because we're literally swaying back and forth, and then we look up and we see the scoreboard, the Jumbotron, starting to sway back and forth. And I'm like, is anyone not feeling this? And that's when they had to make the announcements, and people started kind of like taking note.
Like Zion's debut becomes a footnote after that.
Exactly. Which was actually fine as it all worked out.
Yeah. What is like being around Charles Barkley after his MVP season in 1993? Like, you're how old at that point? What was Charles Barkley like back then?
So they went to the finals the 92-93 season, and Charles was MVP that year.
Yeah.
We did a second place parade in Phoenix that more than 300,000 people were in downtown Phoenix for.
In June.
That was in June. I started with the Suns in July of that year. So I wasn't with Charles during the MVP year. I was with what resulted from the MVP year, which was a whole lot more fun because he was sort of Charles unplugged at that point. But it was a blast. Like, it was really just an honor to be around those teams. Like, it was, as a lifelong Suns fan, growing up literally idolizing Jerry Colangelo, to work with Brian in any capacity during those years was amazing to me. But Charles and what he brought to the city, a really underrated part of the history of Phoenix. He was game-changing for the city as a whole.
The parade he's talking about, there's a picture, well, I don't know if it's still there, but when you walked into the Suns executive offices, the first thing you saw was a picture of this parade. And you've been to, what's it called now? Footprint Center. They change names so often.
It was America West Arena back then.
But you've been there, right?
Yeah.
The main entrance.
Yeah.
Imagine that area and the streets in every direction. And that building that's across the street, the Kimpton Hotel is, wasn't. It was a park, right? Or it was an empty area. And it's just people. Just humanity. And if you're thinking, oh, so what? So it's a big... It's June in Phoenix.
It's June in
Anyone
Phoenix.
out here bitching
like
about
this
it's
outside.
like this plus
it was
plus 3 degrees.
113 or 14 that day, I'm sure.
Yo.
So you know that's a real seminal moment in Suns history because it kind of really illustrated the relationship the team had with the community. Like, it was Arizona's first kind of pro sports team.
And the part for me that like resonated about that was I was one half of a dynamic intern duo known as Dill and Doe. David Cooper was Dill and I was Doe to Charles Barkley. So I have that. I will always have that.
Why were you Doe?
I don't know how because Dill was already there. So Dill was on the run to the finals and I came later.
Did you know he was destined to be Charles Barkley, the entertainer on Inside the NBA?
Yeah, everybody did. Yeah. I mean, when you watched him, you just knew he had so much joy for life. He was going to do something really special when he left the game. I kind of thought he would be more in the line of what Shaq became. I thought he would be more in the line of movies and that kind of thing.
Right.
But you knew he was going to be an entertainer and somebody that everybody cared about for years and years, because he's really unique in his ability to work a room and make everybody feel special. Charles has a really unique ability to make you feel like you're the only human being in a room of 300 people. He shares of himself in a way that very few stars ever have. It's pretty awesome to see, actually.
Why is that? Why? I know Charles said, well, these people pay my bills, and he's got the whole speech, and he'll sign any autograph and take as many pictures as. I mean, I've been to Marley's where he's at the end of the bar, and literally there's a line around the bar, people waiting to take a picture or get something signed. This is like in the middle of the night. It's like 11:30 at night, right? It's not like a meet and greet. He just happened to be there, and literally for every single person, it's what Griff just said. He won't only just do that. He'll be like, "Oh, where are you from? I'm from San Antonio. Oh, there's nothing but like just ugly women and that." Like he'll give you Charles Barkley, your own little bite-sized impression. So when you leave, you're like, "Man, I met Charles. He was so funny. He told a joke." It wasn't just like, "Yeah, he took a picture and he kept it moving."
And you asked why that is. I think there's two things. One, it's who he is. It's innate in Charles. He loves people, and he cares about people. But the other thing is, and he said this before, Charles makes way more money now doing media than he did when he played. The economy was so different for players back then. Like, he made good money.
Right.
He didn't make this money. And so I think he has an appreciation for the fact that he was just a dude like anybody else who made it. And he had gratitude that a lot of people don't have now. The economy of the game has changed a lot.
If you had to pick someone, a current player, who best kind of exudes those kind of Charles-like qualities as a person, who would you pick?
Well, that's a great question. I don't know that I've ever experienced anybody who's quite exactly like that.
He's one of one.
No, you're not going to beat Charles, but like the closest thing to that.
Josh Hart's awfully close in terms of the way he interacts with people in this space. Josh loves to have a good time. He doesn't take himself too seriously. He's got a great sense of humor. He has a lot of that.
So what people are listening might not know is that you and Amin worked together in the Phoenix front office. How did that come to be? How did his resume come onto the table? And were you actually the one to be like, I want this guy?
I was that one.
What a mistake.
I was that one. He came to us at a time when I was, we didn't have big staffs then. We had a really small staff in Phoenix. I mean, I look now at what we had back then, and it's mind-numbing to me. So I had written our scouting database in Access, by way of example. Like, I mean, things were so different then. And we were looking for somebody much smarter than me. And Amin came in with the background he had from a graduate school standpoint. He was capable of a little bit of everything. Really, really bright guy who understood analytics as well as I did. He was better at most everything else than I was. And it was like, look, if you're willing to do this for what we're willing to pay, you're in. And it was literally like the opportunity to learn him happened in a league that was so different. I mean, we've talked about this before. I mean, there's Harvard MBAs that want jobs as interns in analytics that don't get jobs now. I could not get a job in the NBA as an intern with my background. He couldn't either.
No, I say that a lot, that I was at the exact moment before the data explosion happened, and the requirements to even do this was so much higher now than it was when I came in, when talking about rebound percentages was like, what? Like, that blew people's mind. Hey, instead of going points per game, let's go points per 100 possessions. What? Like, that blew people's minds. And now, obviously, that's you look it up on Basketball Reference and get all that stuff. I will say this. So I was hired as an intern, and I interned that first year. And then at the end of the year, Mark Ivoroni left for Memphis, and he took Jason March, who was now, I believe, the head coach of the Memphis Hustle.
Yep.
He took him with him. And so Jason was the assistant video guy, so the job opened up. And Griff says to me, this is the job I got when I transitioned from the PR staff. My first basketball job was video coordinator, and this is great. And, and it'll like explode your knowledge, your IQ. You're going to be around the guys. You're going to work with the coaches, working with scouts, everything. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm ready for it. This is what I wanted. This is, And so he says, and we're going to pay you this much. And I'm like, you know, look, I didn't get into this for the money, but you know, I still got to pay my rent. So I'm like, I mean, and he's like, hey, this is what I made when I started. And I said, you know, well, you know, I see where Griff is, and that's where I want to be. And if this is the start, cool. And I say, okay. And then I go home, and I thought, but Griff started like in 1995, and I did the
inflation
guy. Like Griff, like this is like half of.
I'm gonna break your heart right now too. I lived with my grandmother.
Oh no!
This dude didn't have bills, ladies and gentlemen. He was out here. Meanwhile, I'm like, every time we had a game, we had the post-game spread. I got like 6 to-go boxes because this is my meals for the rest of the month. I needed that. That's how the level of.
Oh my God! I'm gonna take that knife right out of your back here, man.
He okey-doked me so bad, man. I was just all the time like, what about inflation? It's like the minimum wage was $4.25 when Griff was a video coordinator, man. Things have changed in the country. Now interns get paid in the NBA. That's so wild to me. That people are getting paid, not like $4.25 an hour or whatever. Like
depending on the state you're in, they get paid pretty well.
Yeah.
Because they actually have to turn in overtime, which also wasn't done when I started. So it was different for sure.
So when we talk about like working in the league, I think you've said it before that Steve Kerr, when he was running that front office as the GM of the team, there was a sense of joy in the workplace. How hard is it to maintain that sense of joy in the NBA in 2022?
I don't think it's. I guess it just depends on the group you have together and what your goal set is and what your ownership is. And the one thing I'll say is that we're really, really at the mercy of expectations. And I think Brooklyn went through this last year. So Brooklyn this time last year is the odds-on favorite to win the championship.
Like 2 months ago, they were the odds-on championship.
All they can do is disappoint when that happens. Right. So you're put on this pedestal now. And the one blessing for me when we started was social media wasn't a thing at all. Like that just didn't exist. We started Synergy in our video room in Phoenix. Garrick Barr started Synergy. He was our head video coordinator. The stats that were on Synergy were mine, ones that we had created, and the tendency charting was Todd Quinter's. So literally the 3 Suns people started Synergy at the time because there just nothing existed like it. So with the technological proliferation that took place afterwards, everything's different. And social media shapes so much of expectation. So the joy you have in a place like that, I think of Utah as well. I've had this conversation with folks in Utah. When the only thing you can do that will mark success is winning 65 games and a title, your season is most often disappointing. And what you have to do a really good job of level setting is we all get paid to watch more talented people play a game for a living. Guys, we're not that big a deal.
Yeah, Pat Riley's quote that we work in the toy department of human affairs.
Yeah, I mean, we're just not that important. So if you can keep enough perspective for that, when you start to experience expectation, you can still take joy in the fact that it's a game and we make way too much money to be part of a game, and there's people in the universe that have real jobs and real responsibilities and real issues and real bills to pay, and that's not us. So
like when even when you mentioned the second place parade, I can't imagine that happens in this day and age. Like they would get roasted on social media for being
these losers.
These losers, they lost in the finals.
Well, think about it. So everybody roasted Pat Beverly for being joyful about what they had accomplished. There was a time when that meant you cared. And the social media kind of cacophony like shouts him down for
Stugotz,
caring.
like
He shouldn't be shouted down for caring. Like it's nonsense. But when you're not in it and you're voiceless, you want to be as loud as you possibly can so somebody in the distance hears you. Well, the problem is when you're in the midst of it, you don't take any joy. If we're in the midst of losing games, and everybody says we are the greatest thing since the 1927 Yankees, it doesn't change the fact that it sucks to lose games any more than if we're terrible and we're in the process of winning games. The noise doesn't take away the joy of the winning if you can keep it to that. And that's a challenge, and it's hard.
Do you find it's harder, particularly the people you work with on your staff are younger? The players obviously are. Now we're fully in the era where all these kids grew up with this being the most important thing. What they think about me on Instagram, what they think about me on Twitter. Do you find a difficulty of managing that with them and letting them know that's just noise?
Yeah, I think we all do, and I think businesses across the nation are struggling with the same thing. There is very clearly a generational gap now with kids that are coming out of college now that grew up in the presence of social media. Their level of expectation is infinitely higher than people who didn't. And I think it's really interesting. And people whose opinion have been shaped by social currency and getting likes for having this particular opinion, well, it makes it so you end up with a lot of people that are on opposite sides of the aisle. And that's true in sports as it is in life life in general.
I just want to say, really want to encourage you to not control the narrative with Zion going in the future, because we have a lot of fun with that.
No, I understand.
God,
it's good for everyone's jobs that we don't control it. I agree.
Yeah, like when reports are like Zion's in Portland, we just go crazy with that.
And he was in Portland. To be clear, he was in Portland. That was true. So
there's nothing greater than being bored, not having anything to talk about, and then just one little thing like Zion was at a supermarket. Like, oh, here we go.
yeah, this is big doings right here.
let's
don't do any more press conferences at YMCA's anymore, Griff.
Yeah,
like none of that.
No more setting the record straight. We will not do that.
We can't.
You told me a story like before we recorded. Like I had not heard this story about you playing the piano. I'm like, Griff doesn't know how to play the piano.
Well, I'm glad you know that. My mom was shocked too. So.
Yeah, there was a report that you were playing the piano for Zion Williamson in the bubble or something like that. And that's another thing where it's like it just takes on a life of its own. And Amin just somehow did not hear that.
Dude, I don't remember it happening, but it reminded me of this is the level of how far we'll go to believe anything. When Kawhi, I think, just won the championship, and there were a lot of reports about this. There was a fake excerpt from a story about Kawhi going to a restaurant, and they would say, "Oh, it was a team dinner. We were at a steakhouse, and they got to Kawhi, and they said, "Hey, what are you gonna have?" And he said, "Nothing, just a glass of water." So, you don't want to eat anything? He said, "Nope, I brought my own," and pulls out a sack of apples, and then takes out the apples, starts slicing it on the plate, and muttering to himself, "Apple time, apple time." And people believed it, and
yes.
To this day, it tickles me. This is not as that level, but it's 1B. Griff playing the piano. I said, he doesn't know how to play the piano. How could that even happen? Then I imagined like one of those Steinway big pianos, and Griff's there with a smoking jacket, and then there's Zion's laying on top of it like seductively as Griff croons.
I would love to bring that about. By the way, that'd be an amazing visual.
Right, like that's your free agency pitch these days. It's just you're going to be sitting at a piano.
Me at a keyboard. Yeah, it's a good look.
Playing Great Balls of Fire.
Me, Alicia Keys, wooing the person in front of us.
So I think with Zion, we just found out today that the NBA is implementing a take foul, a penalty, going in for next year. The Board of Governors agreed. So does this mean Zion's going to average like 40 points a game? Because there's no way to stop him now.
It's certainly not going to hurt him. I can tell you that. Like if he's got a head of steam now, you're going to have to just get out of the way, which is a blessing, I suppose, for us because Coach Green was already planning to play pretty fast, so this sort of plays right into that. But I think all of those rules changes are meaningful just from the standpoint of making the game more enjoyable to watch.
Yeah.
Our game in transition is really a beautiful thing if it's played the right way. And I think you're going to see a lot of really bad transition basketball as well because of it. But I do think it's something that's going to improve the viewer experience, and that matters.
Going back to Zion, he signs the extension. How much, before he signs the deal, how much management do you have to have of him with the expectations, with all that noise that we talked about before? People say, oh, he wants to leave, he doesn't want to be there, whatever. You know it's not true. He knows it's not true. But do you have to continuously reiterate to him, don't listen to all that?
Not really. He does a really good job of not paying a lot of attention to it. I think most of the time the players do. Often it's the people around the players that are telling them what they saw.
1,000%.
You know, most of them are so busy actually playing the game of basketball and trying to be good at the game of basketball, they don't have time to read it. There's people around him that do it. Brandon Ingram does not do social media. It's something he's totally unaware of. So I've actually called him at times when there have been stories linking him to trades and wanted to get in front of that. And he's like, Griff, I didn't hear it. Don't worry about it, dog. I don't care. And by and large, I think more players are like that than not. In the case of the Zion situation, I said this at the press conference, we did a really bad job organizationally of getting him in front of people and letting him speak for himself. Because he wasn't playing basketball, being around the game was hard for him.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't require him to speak to the media,
Mm-hmm.
and he didn't want to speak because he wasn't playing. And he wanted that to be for people who are playing.
Right.
And if we would have controlled the narrative one time, it would have made your jobs a lot more boring.
Yep.
But it would have put him in a better position to succeed. So I feel like in a huge degree I failed him in that sense. But you didn't have to prep him for anything like
Right.
that. He understands it.
You failed him, but you helped us out.
Yeah. We got the content. We got
I
it.
got more than enough.
Yeah. So Jose Alvarado.
Alvarado.
Yeah.
Oh, I said that off air. No, never mind. Do that again. Cut that.
No, that's part of the show. We're keeping that in. Absolutely. You now are going to get it in my head now. It's going to be in Griff's head now,
Yeah.
too. He's going to go talk to Josie. The whole stealing out of the backcourt and sneaking, did you know about that with his game when you started bringing him in for workouts and Summer League last year? Did you know about that game? I mean, that part of his game?
Yeah, so we got to see some of it during informals, and we saw him doing during even like our scrimmage, our inter-squad scrimmage, and people thought it was just this funny thing he did in the scrimmage, and in reality, it's something he really does. And he's so revved up and in the moment competing, he will literally do anything. I think Dan Campbell is the coach of the Detroit Lions.
Yeah.
And he was the guy who said, we'll bite your kneecaps
Yeah.
and all that.
Yeah.
This kid's going to do anything it takes to win a game, and if it means I sneak up on you, that's the least of the things he's willing to do.
He played a lot for you, rotation minutes in the playoffs, as did Trey Murphy III, as did Herb Jones. Did you guys know at the beginning of the year that you would have 3 rookies playing major roles in rotation minute spots for you in a playoff situation?
Front office-wise, no. I will say that Willie Green was well in front of the Herb Jones situation. So last year, first summer league practice, Willie, we're still in New Orleans at the time, working through free agency. And after the practice, Willie calls Trajan and I and says, hey, Herb Jones, didn't you guys say you thought he'd be in Birmingham at some point?
Mm-hmm.
We said, yeah, probably get some minutes in Birmingham. He said, there's one practice. Griff, I don't think he's going to ever go to Birmingham. I mean, he does things you can't teach. Third practice of Summer League. It's a true story. Third practice of Summer League. He says, Griff, if it's okay, I mean, like, you're going to think I'm crazy. I'm going to start him. And I was like, sure, coach, go ahead, start him. Summer League is fine. Like, do whatever you want. And he says, no. I mean with the varsity. He knew immediately what Herb Jones was going to mean to our team. In Jose's case, he got the opportunity because injury sort of mandated he got the opportunity, and he made the most of it.
Right.
And I felt like our coaching staff did a better job of bringing Trey Murphy along than I could have even imagined, because everything they did, every button they pushed was right for him. Trey was an overthinker, and he was pushing himself too hard to do too much too soon, and Willie understood that and really put him in a good position. And I hope Trey is able to play here the way he's been working out, because his growth has been staggering, and our staff's largely responsible for that.
You guys are one of the rare teams here, which didn't used to be a rarity. Your second-year players are playing in Summer League. That seems to be a trend now. Like, guys play in their rookie year, and if they're, I won't even say good, if they're just decent, they're all for Summer League. Why was it important for you to get your guys who just came off a playoff run, right, to play here?
Yeah. So I think a big part of it is to set the tone for what comes next, right? I mean, every generation informs the next, and we want our team to be about the ethos of Herb Jones, Jose Alvarado. We want to be of that. And so the only way people learn it is to experience it. Miami's culture has been informed by Udonis Haslem for a long time for a reason, because they know each generation informs the next. And we want people to want it like those guys do. So it's really important to us to have our veterans around them. And even if they weren't going to play, so Jose is not going to play now, as it turns out, because he played way more in Puerto Rico than we anticipated. So he's not going to end up playing the rest of this. But because he's at practice all the time, and because he's doing everything that the coaches are trying to get this next wave to do, it sets a tone, and that's really what Coach wanted.
You told me before that having Perk in a locker room is worth like 10 times whatever you're paying him. Like having a veteran guy in that locker room is just so invaluable in the NBA, and I feel like the Udonis Haslems are just kind of extinct in the league. It's very hard to find Udonis Haslems in the league, and I know when you were in Cleveland, you didn't have a finishing out the rotation with a bunch of young guys. You had a lot of older veterans. Why do you think the NBA is moving away from the elder statesmen in the locker room, and do you think they need to get back to that a little bit more?
I do think there's a need to get back to that, but a part of that is because the elder statesmen have made so much money. They don't necessarily want the role of make veteran minimum anymore. Once you make the money these guys are making, doing the veteran minimum, be a role model for a couple years thing isn't as attractive as it used to be, because it means you have to show up and practice hard and do all those things. These guys don't need to do that. So I think that's one part of it. And the other thing that I think has happened is that so many people now, with the analytics wave sort of becoming what it was in sports, so many people are trying to maximize every roster spot for potential upside and high variance, that people that you know are not good enough necessarily to advance the needle, but they're good enough to win you a couple games, they're almost a detriment to you in some ways. And we absolutely are not of that mindset. But it's because we've had success throughout our time in basketball with veteran leaders in the locker room all the time. Kurt Thomas was in Phoenix. He was as good a leader as I've ever seen in sports. Kendrick Perkins was invaluable. I hate giving this guy credit, but Richard Jefferson and Channing Frye were amazing leaders for us. And so because my experience has always been that matters, we've got Garrett Temple in the locker room. C.J. McCollum is valuable to us off the court as he is on it. Larry Nance Jr., same thing. So that's always going to be a part of who we are, but it's rare. I know it's rarer and rarer all the time.
Well, it's rare to find a guy who's so versatile, someone who was on the set at TNT and NBA TV and good at that, and was on the PR side, Griff, and then now he's a championship-winning GM.
And play the piano, too.
And yet he's
versatility.
The piano man himself, David Griffin.
Yo, nail it, piano man.
Thank you for joining us on Basketball Illuminati and the Le Batard Show. We love having you on, and I appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your time in Vegas.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Amin the Dream.
Let's not get into
people
that.
don't call him that enough.
I know
No, that's a relic of a bygone era.
Just call him Dream for short.